chapter 4, verse 1. So when the sovereign knew that the Pharisees had heard that Yahushua made and immersed more taught ones than Yahuhanan, although Yahushua himself did not immerse but his taught ones, he left Yahudah and went away again to Galilee. So, as I was saying in the previous chapter, and kind of always when we read John, this book was written in the interpretation of Sod, which is mystery. So it is the deepest interpretation. So it has the other three interpretations, but um, the point is that in the literal sense, it refers to what Mashiach did when he came. But in the spiritual, it refers to the way the second manifestation will happen. So here, as I was saying regarding the word joy, how the joy of Yahuhanan was completed like a circle. Galil, remember the name Abigail, that is, my father is joy, but also my father is a circle, Gail. Gail is connected to Galil. So it represents a circuit being completed. So the fact that it says went away again to Galil can be seen as coming again to the world to do a ministry, to complete a circle. Like the sun when it begins once again the new day. So, as he was saying, so when the sovereign knew that the Pharisees had heard that Yahushua made and immersed more taught ones than Yahuhanan, although Yahushua himself did not immerse but his taught ones, he left Yahudah and went away again to Galilee. So, as I was saying, as a representation of the first time coming for the Yahudim, but this time he left Yahudah and went away again to Galil, as in to fulfill the circuit. And as we read in Isaiah regarding the coming of the last, from Galil of the Gentiles. And he had to pass through Shomrom, which is a place where there were Israelites, but mixed with Gentiles. So they were seen all as Gentiles. Shomrom means he who guards, as referring to guarding the Torah. But it is representing the fact that the first time he came to his own, but they rejected him. Then he comes to fulfill the ministry again in the land of Gentiles. So he goes through where the tribes are dispersed, represented by Shomrom. And also that those who guard the Torah or the commandments is connected to Revelation 12, when the chosen few are given the wings of the eagle to go to the prepared place, that is during the harvest. Then the beast goes against those who fulfill the commandments, as in the many, represented by Shomrom, those who guard. So he came to a city of Shomrom called Shechem. Shechem means shoulder. That was a land of Yahusef. Yahusef, father of Ephraim, father of Nun, father of Hoshea, who was called Yahushua and became the successor of Moshe, representing the prophet like Moshe who would come in the end times through Yahusef, Ephraim, Nun, and Yahushua. So Shechem was a land of Yosef, and in Isaiah, just like I mentioned it earlier, in Isaiah 9, it talks about the reign or the principality being put on his shoulder, on his Shechem. So here Mashiach is representing the second manifestation. Obviously, this that we are reading, it did happen in the literal sense, and it is quite powerful. But also I'm trying to explain what it represents in the spiritual or prophetical. So he came to a city of Shomrom called Shechem, near the piece of land Jacob gave to his son Yahusef. So we see the confirmation so that we remember that to take it in account when it comes to the interpretation. And Jacob's fountain was there. Remember that Yahushua is the fountain of water of life, our fountain of water. And Jacob's fountain was there. So Yahushua, being wearied from the journey was sitting thus at the fountain. It was about the 6th hour. So it was about noon because the hours start to count from what we now call 6 a.m. So the 6th hour would be 12. So a woman of Shomrom, so this represents a congregation that is within the Gentiles, but it's actually an Israelite thinking it is a Gentile and is trying to guard the commandments and has more faith than those who claim to be Jews. A woman of Shomrom came to draw water. So she was seeking for Mashiach, the water, but she was only getting physical water, meaning temporal um, revelation. A woman of Shomrom came to draw water. Yahushua said to her, "Give me to drink." So that represents the last coming to the world during the apostasy, seeking water as well through the church, represented by Shomrom. For his third ones had gone off into the city to buy food. Now, this is interesting also in the sense that in that time, the Yahudim would not speak to those from Shomrom. They would see them as inferior, as animals, as dirty spiritually. And even less a man talking to a woman. So we see Mashiach breaking those boundaries, I guess we could say, talking to a woman from Shomrom, himself being a Yahudi and a teacher. So it says, the woman of Shomrom therefore said to him, "How is it that you, being a Yahudi, ask a drink from me?" So she herself realizes it and calls him on that. How is it that you, being a Yahudi, ask a drink from me, a woman of Shomrom? For Yahudim do not associate with the Shomronim. You see here the Yud and the Mem as im being the plural. Yahushua answered and said to her, "If you knew the gift of Yahweh and who it is who says to you, 'Give me to drink,' you would have asked him and he would have given you living water." So imagine the faith of this woman, even though to the world she was the worst type of sinner. Um, the faith that was in her and that Mashiach saw for him to go and talk to her and then say this, because even though he's kind of saying like, you don't know who you're talking to, um, he's saying it in order to reveal himself to her. So Yahushua answered and said to her, "If you knew the gift of Yahweh and who it is who says to you, 'Give me to drink,' you would have asked him and he would have given you living water." So he's asking for the physical water. And if she would have realized, she would ask for the spiritual water to receive eternal life. And the gift of Elohim. Remember that in Malachi 3:1, it mentions Mashiach the first as the one whom you seek, and the prince of the covenant, the last, the one whom you desire. So a gift is connected to what we desire. So interesting that, like I said, in the spiritual prophetical sense of this chapter, it refers to the fountain of water being Yahushua, the water of life. And the person here, the last, giving testimony of Mashiach, so giving water as a gift from Yahweh. If you knew the gift of Yahweh and who it is who says to you, "Give me to drink." You see who it is, who says to you, right? The me, as we saw in Proverbs 30. "Give me to drink." You would have asked him and he would have given you living water. The woman said to him, "Sovereign, you have no vessel, So she still uh, is seeing with the physical eyes. The woman said to him, Sovereign, you have no vessel, and the well is deep. From where then do you have living waters? So she is still thinking in physical water, meaning when it comes to living waters, not understanding it as Mashiach is saying it, the eternal life. She is understanding it as um a fountain of water, as living water, for it moves. Are you greater than our father Jacob, who gave us the well? So she's comparing the water that she receives from that well of Jacob, the father, the patriarch, with the water that Mashiach is offering. So since she realizes that what Yahushua said was powerful, she asks, uh, well, are you greater than the patriarch who gave us this water as to be able to give me better water? Are you greater than our father Jacob who gave us the well and drank from it himself? You see, this is amazing because Yahushua is the water of life. When Yahweh comes as the last, he needs to drink himself of that water to be saved. And that's why in Isaiah 63 says, my own arm saved me. He saves himself. When he comes as the last, as the prodigal son, he saves himself through the first. That's why the first is represented by Yitzhak, the last is represented by Jacob. So we see here, are you greater than our father Jacob, who gave us the well, just like the last gives Mashiach to the 144,000, meaning the water of life, and drank from it himself, and he himself drinks from Mashiach. And his sons, the 144, and his cattle. Yahushua answered and said to her, everyone drinking of this water shall thirst again, right? The water that she was gathering. But whoever drinks of the water I give him shall certainly never thirst. And the water that I give him shall become in him a fountain of water springing up into everlasting life. The woman said to him, Sovereign, give me this water so that I do not thirst nor come here to draw. So we see that she is willing to understand, she is willing to believe, and that belief is leading her into understanding. Because here she has not come to full understanding, but she's starting to move towards it because she says, Sovereign, give me this water. So at least she wants that water. She realizes it is a good and better water, so that I do not thirst nor come here to draw. So she continues to connect it to physical water, thinking that if she receives that water, she won't have to work anymore, which is what a lot of people think, right? They come to the Father and they think that all of a sudden everything will be perfect and there will be no effort from their part. But that's not the point. Sovereign, give me this water so that I do not thirst nor come here to draw. Yahushua said to her, go, call your husband and come here. Now, this is interesting. Go, call your husband and come here. Yahushua knew what she was going to answer, so that's why he said it in this way, not to uh, basically, in a way, like point a finger or seem like accusing or attacking at first. For the answer was, as it says here, the woman answered and said, I have no husband. Yahushua said to her, you have well said. So it was in part like a test to see if she would tell the truth, even though she was before the sovereign. And some people would lie because of fear, but lying to him who is the truth would be the dumbest thing, right? So the woman answered and said, I have no husband. Yahushua said to her, you have well said, I have no husband. For you have had 5 husbands, and the one whom you now have is not your husband. What you have said is true. Now, this verse is important because remember that the Torah has 5 books, and that is the Old Covenant, meaning the old husband, right? Yahweh divorces the people of Israel in the book of Yirmiyahu because of their sins and makes a new covenant through Yahushua, through his blood. The congregation, the people of Israel, are freed from the old covenant through death. That's why through death, or till death, there was part, as it is said normally. So, for you have had 5 husbands. So that represents the people of Israel who made a covenant with Yahweh, but through an angel, with the Torah. For you have had 5 husbands, but because of idolatry, there was divorce. And the one whom you now have is not your husband. So the one they were following was not the true Messiah, who is the actual husband. Because remember that in the previous chapter, John said that Mashiach is the bridegroom, right? So now Mashiach talking to the woman from Shomrom is talking about husbands, and the one that she has is not your husband. So it is, like I said, when the last comes to the world during the apostasy, we'll talk to Christians who have the Bible with the Torah and follow a Messiah that is not the true husband of the congregation, is not the true bridegroom. So, for you have had 5 husbands, the Torah, and the one whom you now have is not your husband, false Messiah. What you have said is true. The woman said to him, Sovereign, I see that you are a prophet. So you see how her eyes begin to open, mainly because he just told her everything about her life, right? He told her about the 5 husbands she had had. So she was like, okay, so he knows too much. He must be a prophet. So the woman said to him, Sovereign, I see that you are a prophet. So before this, she had called him sovereign. So he's showing respect. Now she calls him a prophet. So she realizes that the spirit of prophecy is within him. And remember that in the prophetical sense, he represents the prophet like Moshe. Then he says, Our fathers worshipped. So this is very important as well. In fact, I have the 2 of these, the Israelite uh, Samaritan version of the Torah, or the one from Shomrom. So this is pretty much the Torah that she would have. And it is shown in parallel to the one that the Pharisees would have. And when you read carefully, you will see that there are parts where they change the words. And one of the main changes that they make in these 2 versions of the Torah is the mountain that Yahweh chose for his temple, for his worship. Because in one, it mentions the name as Sion, and the other one as Mount Gerizim. And that is exactly the question that she asks Mashiach in this verse that we are reading. All right. So, well, for instance, look at this. I don't know if you're going to be able to see, but on the left, that is the scriptures from Shomrom, and on the right, the Pharisee, which is lacking all of that. So either they took it away or they added it. So as I was saying, our fathers worshipped on this mountain, meaning Gerizim. But you, the Yahudim, say that in Jerusalem Sion, is the place where one need to worship. So she wanted to take advantage of this moment, talking to a prophet, and she wants to know what translation is the correct one. Like many in the chat, what is the translation I should use? Right? She wants to know what is the true interpretation, and therefore, what was the wrong translation. Our fathers worshipped on this mountain, meaning those from Shomrom. But you, the Yahudim, say that in Jerusalem is the place where one need to worship. Now, this is also very important because in the spiritual sense, a mountain represents a kingdom. Now, here we see two kingdoms. One that according to the letter was the correct one, but one that according to uh, commandments of men was turned into a lie, right? So one represents the letter, that would be Jerusalem, Sion, and one a lie, that would be Gerizim. Now we see in the new covenant that Yahweh makes a new Jerusalem. The new Jerusalem would be the true Jerusalem, and the current Jerusalem is a false one, a representation of the coming one, right? So that is the one of the letter. So what I'm trying to say here, that these two mountains that she's asking about represent two angels that have ruled over the earth. Gerizim represents Samael, death, who ruled the first pretty much 2,000 years from Adam till the law. Then came the law and the prophets. That is when the accuser ruled, Halel, represented by the letter by Sion. And then comes Mashiach, who brings truth and favor, the messianic era, the past 2,000 years, which connect to the New Jerusalem that is prophesied in Revelation. So here she's asking pretty much, how should we worship? Through whom? Through what angel? Our fathers worship on this mountain. So in a way, it's like asking, should we worship through tradition or through the letter? And Yahushua says, none. Our fathers worshipped on this mountain, tradition. But you say that in Jerusalem, letter, is the place where one needs to worship. Yahushua said to her, woman, believe me, the hour is coming. This is huge because he was talking about the coming of his death. The fact that he would die would bring that hour that he's about to refer to. The hour is coming when you shall neither on this mountain nor in Jerusalem worship the Father. So Yahushua is saying, once I die, everything will begin spiritually. So the letter and the tradition will no longer matter, and that will not be the way to the Father. Yahushua said to her, woman, believe me, the hour is coming when you shall neither on this mountain nor in Jerusalem worship the Father. You worship what you do not know, as those who worship Samael through the idols, through traditions of men. You worship what you do not know. They would worship in Gerizim. Then he says regarding the Yahudim, we worship what we know, because the deliverance is of the Yahudim. Because salvation would come through the Yahudim. That's why Yahushua was a Yahud. But the hour is coming, and now is. So now it talks in future and in present, in a way like referring to his death. And then when the manifestation of this spiritually would happen during the time of the last, it will be the time already. So, and the hour is coming, and now is. And obviously, he's also referring to the fact that he was already on earth, even though he had not died yet, in order to manifest it. But the hour is coming, and now is, when the true worshipers shall worship the Father in spirit and in truth. I always stay on this verse a lot because, once again, it is a huge verse. The importance of it is um huge, because by saying that the hour is coming means that before Mashiach, this was not the case. When the true worshipers, so there were true worshipers, but they were not knowing how to worship. When the true worshipers shall worship the Father in spirit and in truth. So before Mashiach, they would worship in flesh and in deceit, according to a lie. Because after Mashiach is that they would be able to worship in spirit and in truth. So why do many people looking for the roots um, end up in practices, traditions, and many other things from those who rejected Mashiach and who still do or try and worship the way they would before Mashiach? Therefore, according to the letter, according to the flesh, and according to a lie, because it would be after Mashiach through the spirit of truth that we would be able to worship in spirit and truth. But the hour is coming and now is when the true worshipers shall worship the Father in spirit and truth. So remember how he was talking about Mount Gerizim, Mount Jerusalem, well, that in Sion, that of Gerizim representing the lie that they created, in contrast to the truth that is Mashiach, and Mount Sion, according to the letter or the flesh, in contrast to the spirit that came through Mashiach. So the hour is coming and now is when the true worshipers shall worship the Father in spirit and truth. For the Father also does seek such to worship him. So just like we seek the Father in order to worship him, he's seeking us. Yahweh is spirit, and those who worship him need to worship in spirit and truth. Again, confirming it, and very important, Yahweh is spirit, and those who worship him need to worship in spirit and truth, because they would worship through sacrifices. And David, who was a prophet, realized that Yahweh was not asking for sacrifices of animals, that is of the flesh. So how can they worship with flesh the mighty one who is spirit? So Yahushua is explaining Yahweh is spirit, and those who worship him need to worship in spirit and truth. The woman said to him, I know that Mashiach is coming. So she hears this teaching and she starts to um, think to uh, be suspicious of Yahushua as being Mashiach. So she starts the subject. The woman said to him, I know that Mashiach is coming, the one who is called anointed. When that one comes, he shall announce to us all. Kind of like saying, what you're doing right now, it seems like what Mashiach should do. So are you Mashiach? Right? Yahushua said to her, I who am speaking to you am he. I who am speaking to you am he. So something that Mashiach didn't do with most, he did it with a woman from Shomron. He revealed himself to her because he realized that she had the faith and she was pretty much asking this, but she was worthy to receive it. And upon this, his third ones came, and they were marveling that he was speaking with a woman. So we see again that this was seen as weird, as wrong, in fact. So the disciples themselves, when they saw him speaking to the woman, they marvel. And upon this, his third ones came, and they were marveling that he was speaking with a woman. However, no one said, what do you seek? Or why do you speak with her? Right? They didn't say anything to her nor him. The woman then left her water jug and went away to the city. So we see that if she left the water jug for once, it shows that how she thought of Mashiach now, the teaching, as more important than the physical water, as to leave it behind. But also, it shows that she was thinking about coming back. So she was bringing people to hear him. So the woman then left her water jug and went away to the city and said to the men. So you see how she is acting as a witness, as a which was not done with women back in the day. So Mashiach, by revealing himself to her, making her go to tell men, he was kind of changing the status quo. He was showing also how the congregation, who is represented by a woman, would be the one preaching. So it says, and said to the men, come, see a man who told me all that I have done. Is this not the Messiah? They went out of the city and were coming to him. But in the meantime, his taught ones were asking him, saying, Rabbi, eat. And he said to them, I have food to eat of which you do not know. This is huge as well. Because remember that Mashiach already said to the woman that he had a water to receive everlasting life. But that was not the water that she was picking up from the well. Also, Yahushua explained how it was the time for people to worship in spirit and in truth. So they brought food of the world, earthly food, and they want him to eat. Yet he's speaking spiritually and telling them that he has already his food because he was preaching to this woman and to the people that were coming to him. And he said to them, I have food to eat of which you do not know. Then the third one said to each other, did anyone bring him food to eat? So that shows that they didn't understand what he was actually saying. Yahushua said to them, my food is to do the desire of him who sent me and to accomplish his work. So Yahushua had to explain what he was saying. What gives him energy is to fulfill the will of Yahweh. That is his true food, and that should be our food as well. So when we understand what true food is, then we should interpret correctly when the Torah speaks about eating this and not eating that. It refers to acting in a way and not acting in other ways, right? Because now would be the time to worship in spirit and in truth. So Yahushua said to them, my food is to do the desire of him who sent me and to accomplish his work, just like a lamb would do, a sheep, true sheep. Do you not say there are still 4 months and the harvest comes? 4 months and the harvest comes. See, I say to you, lift up your eyes and see the fields, for they are white for harvest already. So this shows, well, on the physical or the literal sense in that point in time, Yahushua was telling them, you do not see how people are wanting Mashiach. You do not see the thirst that people have for the truth. But in the prophetical, it shows how it represents the coming of the last during the time of the harvest of souls of Revelation 14. Do you not say there are still 4 months and the harvest comes? See, I say to you, lift up your eyes and see the fields, for they are white for harvest already. He who is reaping receives a reward and gathers fruit for everlasting life. He who is reaping receives a reward and gathers fruit for everlasting life, so that both he who is sowing and he who is reaping rejoice together, first and last, the seed and the branch, so that both he who is sowing and he who is reaping rejoice together, the disciples and the chosen few of the end. For in this the word is true. One sows and another reaps. Once again, huge verse showing first and last. Yahushua came to sow the seed, being himself the word of Yahweh, the seed that needed to die in order to become a root for the congregation to grow, and eventually the branch in the end for the fruit, the chosen few, to appear. For in this the word is true. One sows and another reaps. I sent you to reap that for which you have not labored, right? Because the patriarchs labored. They received the promise, but now the disciples were seeing the manifestation of that promise and reaping the labor of the patriarchs. I sent you to reap that for which you have not labored. In a sense, the same thing happens with the disciples and now the chosen few in the end times. The chosen few will reap what the disciples labor for, what they um, put in the land. I sent you to reap that for which you have not labored. Others have labored, and you have entered into their labors. And many of the Shomronim of that city believed in him because of the word of the woman. That is amazing. Because in Yahudah, one of the leaders of the Yahudim, a Pharisee, Nicodemus, went to see him at night. Here we see Mashiach pretty much coming to this woman in the most bright part of the day at noon. Nicodemus, leader of the Yahudim, Pharisee, goes at night to Mashiach. In this case, Mashiach goes to a woman from Shomrom during the day. And he reveals himself to her as the Messiah. The Pharisee says to Mashiach, we know that you're a teacher sent from Elohim because you do those signs. But in this case, the Shomronim believed in Mashiach because of the word of the woman, as in the preaching of the congregation, without signs. And many of the Shomronim of that city believed in him because of the word of the woman who witnessed. He told me all that I have done. Therefore, when the Shomronim came to him, they were asking him to stay with them. And he stayed there 2 days. So, representing the 2 millenniums from first to last. The first manifestation to the second manifestation of Yahweh as the last, the prophet like Moshe. 2 days. That's why for 2 days, the teaching has been going through the Gentiles where the tribes are dispersed. And many more believed because of his word. So not only because of what she said, but now hearing his teaching. And they said to the woman, we no longer believe because of what you said, for we ourselves have heard. And we know that this is truly the Messiah, the Savior of the world. So you see how they confessed him as Messiah, something that the Pharisees weren't able to do for how close they were to, uh, to honor the authority that they had and all of that. And after the 2 days, he left there and went to Galil. Again, confirming in what I mentioned in the beginning regarding Galil. And after the 2 days, the 2,000 years, he left there and went to Galil, the circle. For Yahushua himself witnessed that a prophet is without appreciation in his own country. No one is a prophet in his own land. For Yahushua himself witnessed that a prophet is without appreciation in his own country. So in Galilee, he didn't receive much faith. When he went to Shomrom away, everybody believed in him in a simple way through the teaching without signs. So that is very interesting and how true it is. For Yahushua himself witnessed that a prophet is without appreciation in his own country. Therefore, when he came to Galilee, the Galileans received him, having seen all that he had done in Jerusalem at the feast, for they also went to the feast. Then Yahushua came again to Cana of Galilee, where he had made the water wine. And there was a certain nobleman whose son was sick at Nahum. When he heard that Yahushua had come from Yehuda into Galilee, he went to him and was asking him to come down and heal his son, for he was about to die. You see this name right here, Nahum. Well, let me go and show it in the concordance. You see, it comes from Nahum. Here we have kafar, which is to cover. Well, see it here, to cover. But here they're putting it as a village because of the place that is referring to as Kafar Nahum, but is the covering or the atonement, Nahum, the covering of comfort, of consolation, comfort. And you see how in the word Nahum we have the name Noach. Noach, the coming of the Son of Man will be like the days of Noach. And that Son of Man, the last, dies on Yom Kippur, as in Kapar, Day of Atonement. So going back, then Yahushua came again to Cana. Remember, reeds, as in the sea of reeds that separated when the Exodus happened from Egypt. Then Yahushua came again to Cana of Galilee. Reference in a way to the second Exodus, where he had made the water wine. Remember that in the Exodus, Yahweh turned water into blood for judgment, as we see in Revelation 11 regarding the two witnesses. Here, Mashiach came to bring mercy, so he turned water to wine. And there was a certain nobleman whose son was sick at Nahum, the covering of consolation, comfort. When he heard that Yahushua had come from Yehuda into Galilee, he went to him and was asking him to come down and heal his son, for he was about to die. Yahushua said to him, if you people do not see signs and wonders, you do not believe at all. So we see that at this point he was a little bit fed up seeing the contrast between those in his town and those outside of. Those in Shomrom who came to believe easily, the reaction of the Yahudim, and then here in Galil. If you people do not see signs and wonders, you do not believe at all. The nobleman said to him, Sovereign, come down before my child dies. Yahushua said to him, Go, your son lives. And the man believed the word that Yahushua spoke to him and went. And while he was going down, his servants met him and reported, saying, Your son lives. He then asked from them the hour in which he became better, and they said to him, Yesterday at the 7th hour, the inflammation left him. The 7th hour, right? Completion, as in the 7 years, the last week of Daniel, and the 7th millennium, which is the Shabbat, rest. Then the father knew that it was at the same hour in which Yahushua said to him, "Your son lives." And he himself believed, and all his household. Again, this was the second sign Yahushua did when he had come from Yehuda into Galilee. Second sign, just two in Galilee, turning water to wine and now healing a child that was about to. Just like in the Exodus, which brought judgment, the firstborn died during the 10th plague. Here, Yahushua saved a son from dying. Just like in the plagues, the first one turning water to blood. Now, here, Mashiach, his first miracle was turning water to wine. So, in a way, he was reverting everything through mercy, right? So, that's why a reference to Cana, as in the Exodus, Galil, as in the repetition of Kefar Nahum, as in him being the covering of our sins, the atonement. The water to wine, as in the contrast to the water turning to blood. And of course, the healing of the son in contrast to the dying of the firstborn in Egypt during the 10th plague. Also, if we see this, remember that Moshe was given two signs to show that he was sent by Yahweh. The first one turning the scepter into a serpent, a Nahash, same numerical value as Mashiach. So the authority of Yahweh would come to the world and be seen as a serpent who would swallow the other serpents. So that was representing Mashiach coming, the first. Then he would put his hand in his bosom and then he would put it out and it would be as a leopard. And then it would be healed, representing the coming of the last as the prodigal son. So if we were to connect these two signs mentioned here, and this was the second sign. So the first sign, water to wine, represents the mercy that Mashiach brought through his blood, being the water of life, turning into a man in order to give his blood through death, in order to give us life eternal. And now the second sign, giving life to the Son, in a way, because the world has hidden the true Messiah, the true Son. So the last gives testimony of Yahushua, of the true name of the Messiah. Also, he himself is the prodigal son who was dead in sins, but through Mashiach, he is recovered. He comes to life. And the fact that the chosen few are children of Yahweh who receive life through the teaching. So, in a way, that connected to the second manifestation, that second sign.